Hey, everybody. Today we are really focusing in on complementary angles. So, hopefully, you are already familiar with what complementary angles are. It is two or more angles that have a sum of 90 degrees. Okay, what we're going to do today is going to be a little bit trickier than maybe any of the ones that you've done before. So, anytime you're given a pair of angles that look a little more complex, like these ones, see how there's a lot of variables in there, there's some parentheses we're not used to seeing, all that good stuff. There's a set of steps that we're going to take to make sure that we solve this correctly. Okay, first, you're going to have to identify what kind of angle pair it is. And I'm telling you, the one that we're doing today is complementary. But in the future, you're not necessarily going to be told. Then, what you'll do is you'll set up an equation. And for most angle pairs, complementary, supplementary, and adjacent, the equation follows a pattern. You do one part plus the other part. So one of the angles plus the other angle equals the whole. And in this case, the whole is 90. So let's go ahead and just write 90 down there. Then you'll solve the equation, you'll check your solution, and you'll make sure that you've correctly answered the question. As far as solving the equation goes, because you may not have solved an equation in months, let's make sure that we have those steps written down so that we can come back and look at them later. Okay? So the first step in these kind of questions, if you need to, is simplify. And when we say simplify in this case, we mean combine like terms. And to combine like terms, we usually use what we call a T-chart. Then you would continue with the steps that we learned way back when we first solved equations, which is eliminate the constant and isolate the variable. So you get rid of the plain number first, the number that's by itself, and then you work on getting that variable by itself. Okay? So these are the steps that we're going to take, and we're only doing one problem like this today because the best way to learn this is to practice, but make sure you have this one example written down so you can reference it while you're practicing. All right, here it is. Step one hold on, back up. Let's read the question. It says solve for the value of x. So at the very end, our last step is going to be to make sure we've answered the question, and that's what's going to tell us if we've answered the question or not. Okay? So, step one, identify the angle pair shown. Well, I'm telling you these are complementary, but how can you tell from looking at this picture? And this little box right here that I just outlined in purple, that's your key. That means 90 degrees. That means complementary. So I'm going to circle that. Step one, done. Step two is to set up an equation where we do one part plus the other part equals the whole. So the first part of my angle pair is 3x plus 13. And then the second part of my angle pair is 4x. And we always get asked in class if you need to draw those parentheses, and I say no, because we're not used to solving equations that have parentheses unless it's distribution, and I don't want anybody to get confused about this being distribution, so I say just write it. And then equals the whole, which in this case we know is 90 because it's complementary. Step one done, step two done. Step three is to solve it. Okay, so I'm going to draw my line here. And then when we solve an equation like this, we make a T-chart. And I know I need to make this T-chart because on the left, there's two terms that have an x in it. Okay, and I need to put those together. So 3x positive 13 plus 4x. I'm just doing this down here in the corner where I have a little bit of space. 3x's plus 4x's gives me 7x's, and then I just have this positive 13 hanging out. So I'm going to bring that all the way back up here, 7x plus 13 and bring down my 90. When we were solving these in the beginning of solving equations, we would draw an arrow that like showed you to bring it back up there. I don't want the arrow to get in the way, but in case you're confused where that came from, that's where it came from. Then I'm going to solve the rest of this equation, and I'm not going to make you watch me solve it. So hang tight, I'll be right back. All right, I have solved the equation. If you still need help solving equations, hopefully, I will remember to link that video below for this kind of equation, but I get x equals 11, okay? The fourth step is to check the solution. And this, in my opinion, is the most important part of solving any equation. So I'm going to put in the equation that I originally wrote. Okay, and this is where it gets a little bit iffy because if you made a mistake in that first equation, it could throw things off here. But hopefully we set up our equation correctly. And then I'm going to try my answer, which was 11. And if you look, it gave me 90, and I was supposed to get 90. So that means I did check it correctly, and I did that by using Desmos. So I'm just going to write Desmos right here. Check. All right, the very last step is to make sure that we answered the question. So let's go back to that question that I almost skipped in the beginning. It says, solve for the value of x. Okay, and I found that x equals 11. So does that answer my question? Yes. X equals 11 is the actual answer that they wanted in this question. And that is the end. It is a process, but you're going to do the same thing with supplementary and adjacent angles. Vertical are a little bit different, but you're going to do the same thing for 3 types of angles. So just make sure to write down these examples and then ask us questions if you have them. Leave a comment, send an email, reach out, ask us. We're happy to answer.